Yeah, I think it's a really good example. I mean, uh, not defining the temperature of these substances. I think it's definitely not something that a data officer should do, and leave it to the experts on that topic. But a follow-up question, yeah. Also, now based on your experience, you said centralize as much as needed and decentralize whatever is possible. But have you seen companies that have shifted something that was maybe decentralized to something centralized and vice versa? Yeah, and what kind of, like, maybe you can give also an example if you have seen it, like where it makes sense to shift it. Because, and why I'm asking this, because if you have a rather immature data management company and then you come and you say like, this is centralized and this is decentralized, and they finally understood, and that takes time, as you know. Yeah, it's not something that takes like 3 months, it takes more than that. And then you come and then you say like, oh, okay, now we do a shift, this becomes now vice versa. Yeah, is that sometimes I find that maybe challenging in the way of acceptance, you know?
Yeah, whenever something changes, whether in one direction or the other, change always comes with resistance. That's also why it's not sufficient to be right. You need to get people's buy-in, you need to explain, and so on. And in this area of centralized versus decentralized, in many cases, the first steps in the area of data have been done by IT. Why? First of all, because it's in their databases, in their boxes, but secondly, because IT has traditionally been acting cross-functionally. Yeah, so they were those with, across all the functions, but they had traditionally the approach of let all of this happen in our central solutions and applications and databases and everything, which was then becoming a data theorem for many, many companies. Let's ensure we centralize all the data so that people don't speak different languages and everything. So the ideas were good. The solution turned out not to be sustainable because you don't just get everything into one central database. And the paradigm shift didn't actually happen because the IT folks started to understand. The paradigm shift came when we went into working with the cloud, software as a service, where we saw it happened driven by technology, and then people learned that you can keep things in a decentralized way without giving up interoperability. Yeah, when we getting back to the original example of business parties, commercial versus financial, you don't need to get the one SAP solution that also covers the marketing view. You need one small hub that holds all the identities, their relationships, their roles, and so on, and then shares that with the financial world, and shares that with the commercial world, and maybe shares that with the logistics world and the others, so that they have one common denominator. That if I say, okay, that is the oncologist in this hospital that I'm talking to, that oncologist is not a financial customer. It's nowhere in the SAP system. But actually that oncologist is a person who takes a decision. Because he knows from a medical perspective, right? But we need to ensure that that oncologist and the hospital chain that he's working for are somehow linked. Yeah, and that is the task, that we do that centrally without forcing a CRM system and an ERP system into the same platform, which will not work.
Yeah, fully agree with you again. And it's nice how you kind of point that all out. And we will soon leave this part of the conversation, but I have one, again, two aspects that I would like to hear your opinion on. Yeah. So given the fact that a lot of CDOs get to the position where it is claimed they have failed. Yeah. And one of the reasons why I see, for example, CDO initiatives not failing, but being at least confronted with that scenario that they failed, is they select the wrong North Star initiatives or lighthouse initiatives. I find a kind of pattern that they're kind of over enthusiastic and jump on maybe too big challenges, too long initiatives. What is here your observation? Yeah, like, would you say that selecting projects or programs or use cases is one of the core activities that a CDO should do at the beginning because of, yeah, justifying their existing, justifying what they bring to the table, the value contribution, so on. So what is your preferences here? Rather big projects, rather small projects? What is your view on that topic?
It depends on how successful you are with expectation management. Okay. If the company expects data to cure world hunger and give eternal peace to all of the earth, you will fail. If you manage to demonstrate that data first is a tool that helps you make things easier, and you get one success after the other, then it's better to start with a small initiative with low-hanging fruits where people can say, oh, it worked very well in that small corner. I want that in my corner as well. And then it's not about the big thing, but about effectiveness in a small thing. And that, to me, is the most promising recipe to get buy-in in a company.
Okay, yeah. I mean, again, I think it makes totally sense what you're saying. It's about buy-in at the beginning, yeah? It's not about being right, as you said. It's about having the buy-in at the moment or at the beginning, being more a little bit tactical, also in the movements, what to do first and so on.
It's the credibility, right? If somebody says, and we are going to them and big monster and so on, people will measure you by those announcements and will say, okay, where is your big gain? Yeah. But if you say, no, I don't promise you the one big monster scenario or use case, I will show you that each of you in your daily work can benefit from data, and summing it all up gives us a big benefit and not the one big bang thing that makes everybody happy.
Yeah. So I want now to make a final question to now the influences or what has an impact on the CDO role. And now we in Europe or in Germany in particular, if I compare now our country or our region with, for example, the US, I would say the US, we see much more CDOs active than in Germany, for example. And we would like to push it more here also. But now when we look more on a macro economical level, we see some obstacles arising, COVID, and then the Ukraine-Russia war, and the there or not there recession that everyone is talking about, and so on. Do these macro events have an impact on a company's decision to go for a CDO or not to go for a CDO? Is it rather favoring the decision to have a CDO, or rather saying, let's wait for it, we need to kind of stick to the game that we know? What is your take on that?
Yeah, I was surprised when COVID came up. I thought, companies would then see what can we do to, and then data is one of the. They didn't. Yeah. They said, look, data is a long-term strategic thing. I really like the idea, but now I'm in survival mode. And the same with the Ukraine-Russia thing and with our economical difficulties, where people said, as soon as I get my daily problems under control, I will look at data, because what's the point in being great at data with data in 10 years' time, but getting bankrupt in 5 years? So I have to ensure that the system, that the basics work and that it's all stable, and people don't see data as part of the basics. And that's why I'm always stressing that data is not just analytics and it is part of the foundation. A stable data foundation helps us do our daily business in a safer way.
I hope that you give me a different answer. That
unfortunately, that was my observation. Maybe my view is not representative. Maybe the companies that I talked to were not representing everything, and maybe somebody has a different. But that was my personal observation.
I mean, we can definitely look into comments and questions if the audience is seeing that and wants to give us some additional view from their point of view. But I must say I share the observation with you. I think that people or companies jumped on the train, yeah, and now also with the train called Gen AI, not
not AI,
yeah,
important thing,
yeah. So, but they kind of misunderstood the bigger assignment, which is the fundamentals, yeah, that you said, like the 50 levels below the Burj Khalifa that needs to be first of all established, yeah. And then I see companies saying like, oh, okay, that tower is maybe too big a little bit for us. It doesn't have to be the Burj Khalifa. We can go for, I don't know, Hamburg Twin Towers, yeah. So that's a level that we can work with. So unfortunately, yes, I think there is a lack and still of understanding that data is one of the core elements of a company. It's people, processes, technology, and data. Yeah. Okay, Martin. We do a cut here, yeah, and we move to our little gamified next activity. I will explain everything over there, and I would like to see what do you think about what I have prepared. But from here, first of all, thanks for so far for the conversation, and yeah, let's shift positions.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, Martin. Now we are in a standing position in front of the board here, and as I told you, I always prepare a little game, which is due to the hobbies of our guest. And you told me that you are a huge fan of gardening, and so we prepared here based on the conversation that we have, the Chief Data Officer garden. You can see it is kind of well structured and organized.
Unlike my garden.
Really? What kind of garden style do you favor?
Natural.
Natural. Okay.
It has to look naturally.
Okay. Okay.
So it's a lot of work to make it look naturally.
Yeah.
It's not even as extreme as the Japanese, who really bring this to the top, that it really is hard work to make it look natural, but it is important to me as well.
Okay, but it's not British. The British style is really like wild and everything is growing.
It comes close to it.
Okay.
My wife doesn't like it that much. She said, it must be like this.
Accurate,
no, she's a bit more German than I am in that sense. And I think, if it looks like we are in the wilderness,
yes,
then it's my style.
Nice. Okay. Okay. So this Chief Data Officer garden is kind of apparently really structured and organized. So maybe it already is succeeding at the company where it is operating. Yeah. So we have behind these boxes, you can see we have a few questions. You are free to select the boxes that you want to be turned. And then I will ask you the question about the Chief Data Officer and his activities in his garden. And also, I will use the opportunity then also to give us, myself and the audience, a little bit also more the chance to understand Martin Treder better and his interest in gardening. Yeah. So I'm looking really forward to your answers. And now it's your turn. Where you wanna which card you wanna flip the first?
Of course, this one.
Okay. This one here. Then let's do this. It says, gardens need a mix of sunlight, water, and care to thrive. What's the right mix of elements for a healthy data culture?
Yeah. Oh, that's a big mix.
Yes.
Yeah, it's you need data literacy so that people really understand what this is about. Otherwise, it's a bit like believing, which is not sustainable. But you also need good cases. You need a very open mind, because this is new to many people. And if you are generally not open to new things, you cannot be open to data. And then, of course, you need a dose of data expertise, because if you don't have the experts, everything else will remain theory.
Okay, beautifully said. I must say, yeah. It sounds like that you have maybe used already the gardening as an analogy. So, as I said, I want to also give us the opportunity also to a little bit understand your interest in gardening. So, tell me, what is gardening? So, why is it so special to you? Why is it something that you appreciate?
Um, if you let go, the garden will develop in a direction that you don't like. Yeah, then you have you have brumbleberries and all the things that you don't want in your garden. And the longer you wait, the more difficult it is to get away from it again. And I'm really working hard to ensure that there's it's a structured wilderness.
Okay.
Yeah, so that you don't have lots of small weeds in between. So it is designed in a way, and then you have your watch directions where you sit there and have a view there, and then here you see the green, and later in the year this one turns red, which compensates for that, having lost all the leaves, and all of these things have to be considered. And then I have trained myself to be able to sit and enjoy. I'm not, permanently working. Yeah. I'm doing it for a purpose, and it's a very selfish purpose. I want to be able to enjoy my garden, and then, you have banks and chairs and everywhere, yeah. Benches and chairs and everywhere, and then you sit there and say, "Isn't that nice?"
No, I can fully understand that what you're saying, and I like that you take really everything kind of under consideration, but also you give it space to naturally, organically grow. Yeah. So if it would be the world of economics, you would be kind of the invisible hand. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big word.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big word. Exactly. Yeah. But that means you are taking under consideration sunlight, watering, shadows, and yeah.
Even maintainability, because by nature I'm lazy and I don't want to have a garden that requires my full attention in all details permanently.
Perfect. Brilliant. Then I would say that was a really good start. Now let's look into the next box that you would be interested in opening.
The top right one.
The top right. And there we go. If your data were a garden, what would you plant first? Compliance trees, analytical flowers, or an AI innovative wines?
You have to have the right mix from the very beginning. So it's not that you do one first and then the others. Of course, you have to, somehow start with compliance. But if you just do lots of compliance, people will wait for something tangible forever. So while doing your compliance thing first, you already need to come up with the first initiatives that deliver visible value. The low-hanging fruits. They say, okay, I can help someone do something, and say, you are happy? Yeah, I'm happy. Go and tell everybody. Yeah, and then people will then buy into your compliance trees as well.
Yeah, I fully understand what you're saying. Now, based on your experience, I mean, now that you are in a medical or industry or pharma company, would you say that there are more low-hanging fruits in the compliance sector than it was at the logistics, or is it actually?
In pharmaceutical industry, compliance is more prevalent, it's more relevant. People are afraid of not being compliant, and for good reasons, right? If you just fail to deliver 5% of your packages on the same day, so what? But if 5% of your patients don't survive, it's a big problem. So the health of humans, and in the case of Boehringer also animals, is paramount. That the risk tolerance is that small, so you really have to ensure that you control what's going on. And you cannot just say, oh, everybody knows what they are doing. So compliance is a means to technically ensure that people follow the rules, high priority. So if you do something to support compliance, in the pharmaceutical industry, you will get support. If you do that in the logistics industry, people will say, go out of my way, let's be pragmatic and...
Okay. 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 A follow-up question now on your personal interest again, or on your garden, let's say it that way, yeah? What do we see more in your garden? Is it flowers? Is it trees? What do you, is it?
Actually, I'm fine with just green. Okay. My wife wants all the different colors of the flowers and everything, and I can live with 40 shades of green.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I hope you like the activity, Martin.
Yeah, so far I can't complain.
Okay, what next box?
This one?
Yes. I think I like this question, if I remember right, which one is behind it? Yes. Every gardener has a favorite plant. Is there a favorite part of your work as a CDO that brings you the most joy? Now, yeah, what would you say of a CDO?
It's talking about data with people like you.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, I take that. Let's look into the next box. I think we can go for a few more.
Yeah, the bottom.
The bottom, okay. Finally, if data were like flowers, which flower best represents the work of a chief data officer and why?
It needs to be a flower that looks good, smells good, keeps the leaves in winter and is easy to maintain, might be complex from the inside but easy to use, and ideally have fruits as well. In short, it's a flower that doesn't exist.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, I thought about this question, which flower I would take. And to be honest, the best answer I came up with was roses, because they need to appear favorable to everyone in the end. Yeah. And I think roses do this. And then they have the thorns. Yeah. I think this is an underestimated characteristic of a CDO. You need to have like a little bit the elbow mentality and be a little bit stronger, and also hurt a little bit the people that want to benefit from you.
Yeah, ideally you hurt people without them noticing that you're hurting them. Otherwise, you foster resistance.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. You good to go for one more?
Yeah, then let's the center on the right. Take
on
that
the
one.
center on the right. Okay. Okay. Gardeners often experiment with new plants or techniques. What's a time? What's a time you took a risk in a data project, and how did it turn out?
Very often you have to take risks. It's just if you only do things that people have done before, you won't move things forward. Yeah. So I have actually done a lot of things where people told me it won't work. And I said, why will it not work? It hasn't failed before. And I say, did people do it exactly the way that I'm going to do it? I don't know. Well, I said, yeah, let's, as long as we don't repeat the same recipes, we can try it again. And you know, these, of course, we have, 2 years ago, I said, we need to be able to tell people how to do things. Because people sometimes said, I would like to do the right things. I don't know how to do them. Others told us, okay, you want me to do this. I don't want it. How do you want to force me? Or, you know, how do you, where is it written? And I said, okay, written? Let's write it down. So I said, let's collect a couple of data standards. And started collecting them, talking to people, having the first draft, sharing that with people, making it a bit more formal, talk to the formal documentation guys. How do you do that in the best possible way? 2 years later, we have our formally approved master data standards, applicable, valid for all 53,000 Boehringer Ingelheim employees. And people, in the beginning, people said, no, it won't work. Forget about it. I said, I don't want to forget about it. I will just give it a try. It can still fail. Okay, I have a lot of things. I've done a lot of things that have failed. Yeah, so I'm very, very typical in that regard. But I said, rather than not trying it in anticipation of failure, I give it a try and see whether we can do anything about it. Yeah, it went live April 1st this year. So, and now I'm trying to train people on it and so on, and make it a foundation for us to work.
Ah, that's a huge achievement. Yeah, definitely. Especially if there were like this skepsis visible to you. And as you said, I think taking risk in failure is part of the journey. Yeah. How do you deal with it? Yeah, because there's a lot of, I would say, also expectations and yeah, on the shoulders of someone, yeah, that is carrying this topic and needs to make sure that the company is making that shift. How do you deal with taking risk or making maybe some unsuccessful decisions for that time and then, yeah?
I'm still not able to say I just take it as it is. People might not notice it, but it's really, for me, it's always a feeling of how will I feel if it fails or if I face resistance. I'm not a machine, I'm not an engine or so. I really have to keep educating myself. I don't have to prove anything to anybody anymore. Right? I've done this now for 30 some years or so. I have seen almost everything, so I don't need to prove. It still hurts if you face resistance, or if you try to do something and somebody says you haven't done it in a proper way. And if somebody says that, I cannot say, well, I have, because the perception is what counts. And if somebody says, I perceive that as not being successful, then there's a point. Yeah, and then you have to digest it and see how do you learn from that? How do you change your behavior? And then how do you keep asking people for feedback? Yeah, because you provoke more of your inner pain by asking people. But if you don't do it, how are you going to learn?
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think it's a very wise way of dealing with it, to involve people, yeah, and being in that sense also vulnerable to feedback that you might don't want to hear, but you can make sure then also, if you have people in, that they contribute to it. Yeah, so it's not just your work at the end; it's a joint activity. Yeah?
Absolutely important, right? This is, even if you think you know everything better, ask people, and usually you will get surprised. There is so much good feedback because people see things from totally different perspectives. I cannot put myself into every perspective. And there's so many good, and if you all put all of that together, then you can create something that is really sustainable.
Great. Martin, that was fun. And I appreciate you sharing with us your experience in gardening, yeah, related also to Chief Data Officer's activities. And also that, yeah, at the end of the day, these activities, they require taking risks, they require to collaborate and so on. And at the end, we are humans, yeah, and it gets to us. But I think, yeah, at the end, the outcome is worth the effort. Yeah. Okay, Martin. Then we go back to our sitting position and continue the conversation over there.
Perfect.
Thank you. So, Martin, back from the hard work in the garden to the comfortable sofa. How did you like it?
Interesting to combine data with gardening. Yeah. I haven't done that before. I love analogies. I haven't had that one. So thanks for enriching my experience. Well done.
Okay, great. Yeah, great that you liked it. And yeah, thanks for sharing your answers and thoughts there also. And I think we also picked a little bit of good practices for the gardening from you. And now I would like to touch a different topic, which is related to the CDO. I want to cover with you the value contribution a CDO is basically promising or delivering. So the CDO's responsibility if it comes to monetization, Yeah. Let's start with a very open question. What's your view on that? Yeah. So do you think that a CDO at the end of the day needs to define also success criteria in regard to monetization? Is that something that should be on the agenda?
Actually, everybody should, in different directions maybe. And for CDO, a huge part might be, avoidance of issues, the defensive part, and that creates probably some of the best business cases if you consider how high the penalties for GDPR violations can be. But it shouldn't stop there. You should always cover both sides. One side is, preventing from going down, and the other is the opportunity of going up. And this is also something that needs to enrich a CDO's portfolio, so that you're not seen as only the cost cutter or something.
Mm-hmm. For the audience, maybe just to make sure that everyone understands what data monetization really means. Yeah, you covered already one aspect, but if we do one step back, can you say in your words what is part, or how do you define data monetization?
To me, it has a couple of aspects. One aspect is ensuring that we save money. Yeah. One aspect is that we use data that we have, or that we create more value than the data acquisition costs us. Okay. And the third one can be actually selling data, which means you're not only selling cars and medications and services in them, but you are also selling data. I mentioned some companies really sell data only, and for them data monetization is the heart of the company. Others might realize that it's a nice windfall profit that you gather data, and it could be of value for others. Just imagine, I remember when I was working in the transport business, Google knows all the companies. But who knows better than Google when a company went bankrupt? Google usually doesn't know it, because they don't call Google and say, please mark me as bankrupt. Look at Google Maps on all the companies. A company disappears, and 2 years later it's still marked there because nobody has asked Google to delete it. Sure. Who would find out immediately? It's the express courier that tries to deliver a package there and sees it's no longer there. So that kind of information could be sold to other companies to enrich the typical Google or other address data. Or many years ago with another express company, we worked together with a company that looked at whether streets were congested. And we realized that if we monitor the delivery trucks, how they get stuck in traffic, that could add, they could just gather all that information for free, because the trucks are on their way anyway. So they worked with delivery companies, and they worked with taxi companies who both don't have selling data as their core raison d'etre, but who realize that as a side effect of what they are doing, they're creating data and they can sell it. This isn't even raw data. Yeah. Other companies even process data and have then enriched data on offer, and that's an opportunity. Whenever you have that, take it.
Yeah, I like your definition, because you touch different aspects or facets of data monetization. You covered the, let's say, external view, leading to also maybe new products or services. Yeah, I like that example with the with the companies that are bankrupt, and you're fully right. Yeah, makes completely sense that the logistic company has the data and should somehow use it. Yeah. But you also covered the, let's say, internal monetization or data monetization aspect, which is improving operational processes and being more operationally efficient in a way. Yeah. two questions here. Yeah. Maybe the first one is also a little bit of repeating it already. How do you find the right balance? How do you would say, like, that's how you should tackle it, that's how you should try to identify how to balance both, and who does the CDO align on these topics? Yeah, because at the end, if you want to do that, and we discussed it earlier, the business units are in the position to say, this is how we want to do sales, this is how we want to do marketing, and so on. Yeah. So how can we imagine here the conversation, yeah, between CDO and others?
Yeah, an important aspect is definitely a culture of business cases. How do you calculate, and what's the credibility? If a company has a long-standing tradition of misusing business cases to justify what they have been doing or what they want to do, and if my business case is not good enough for funding, I have to tweak the business case, not my business model, then you will have difficulties. Then the typical logic of a CDO just will not work. Then you have to play this psychological part. You have to paint it in colorful pictures and play the game that you don't believe in, but that seems to be the game of the company. Yeah, so you really have to look at the culture of the company. Other companies who reward people for recommending to stop their baby because it has a negative business case, they have a right attitude. And that's where you can say, okay, let's look at, let's agree on certain framework parameters. How long do we calculate the business case? 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Okay, deal. What is the distribution of costs that occur anyway? Yeah, so that if we don't do the data initiative, we don't save anything. Yeah, then you can calculate, you can redistribute the cost, and so on. So then you have your frameworks, and then you can simply calculate a business case. And that business case applies to all three types of data monetization that I've mentioned. Whether it's about cost avoidance, whether it's about enabling things through data, whether it's about selling data to third parties.
Yeah. So you would say using already existing parameters in regard to company strategy and strategic targets, objectives, and identifying then the linkage between the data initiatives, that is also key. Yeah. So you should, if you engage in these kind of monetization initiatives, make sure that this is actually something that is on the agenda of the company, yeah, whether it's a strategic project or strategic goals and so on, that then contributes to the higher good, I would say.
In general, yes. Of course, you can come up with a great business case that enables a company to do something that they have forgotten to put on the priority list or on the strategy list. Then maybe you make a proposal to add it. But in principle, the key point is it must be better to do it than not to do it. Yeah. And you need to be able to prove that in a way that the company accepts. Yeah. And sometimes if you look at data as an enabler, you run the risk of double counting, because you are enabling so many initiatives who will claim all their gains on their own. And if a company then has a rule that double counting is not allowed, you will have a hard time justifying your, it's just like the foundation of the Burj Khalifa. Without the Burj Khalifa on top would have had a tremendously bad business case. Millions of dollars just to have a concrete dancing floor, right? So you need to be able to put that in the frame of how the company works with business cases. Hopefully, the cost of not doing it is part of it, because without the risk of double counting, you can say that, and that great initiative, great things, they deserve all the credits, wouldn't have been possible without our data work. Yeah.
How much is product thinking something that a CDO or the Chief Data Office should kind of inherit? Because at the end, when we talk about these data products at the end, it requires a little bit of product thinking at the end. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I like it. I would never have chosen the word product, because product is very, very much about how do I sell, how do I convince people to buy something that they actually don't need. But if you just change the definition to a product is something. It's a contract between the consumer of the product and the producer of the product. And then I would say, how would I ideally build my product, and how do I explain it to the consumer that he sees as a benefit? If you do this, then you learn very quickly as a data person that you don't construct your product around data things, but around business things. Yeah, if you think of a typical data product, is your engine that allows for machine learning, your data repository, the business couldn't care less. Yeah. If you say, my product allows you to fulfill your business objective ABC, and then you differentiate between the face to the customer, which is the product, and the engine room, which is a totally different thing.
Yeah, to be very straightforward to you, whenever, not always, but many times I see myself with data people who are head of data management or analytics or CDOs, and you ask them, so what's your value contribution? And they give me always the same answer. We build up the foundation, and that is not really accessible in a business case, and so we lead to then at the end a value. I must say, at the beginning I was okay with this answer, but sooner or later I kind of had the impression that this is a kind of answer which is misleading, and they kind of try to avoid really to define why they are needed. And I think now we reach a stage in general where people are also not more patient enough to accept that answer. So as you said, there needs to be a clear business case, business criteria. And I think that's also one of the reasons why CDOs are kind of misunderstood. And because they cannot really quantify what are you bringing to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. So it must be able to be relatable, right? So this is the face to the customer view is different from the engine view. It's just mapped, right? When we thought, well, how do we manage our business party managers offering? We could have said we have an SAP tool where it's all stored, or 2 or 3 tools where it's all stored. People don't care. What we then did internally, we said we set up a number of aspects, of data aspects that we need to put in place. People still couldn't care less. But then we said we collected all the use cases. What keeps you awake at night? What do you really want to do? What it would be a value add for you? And mapped those to our 10 aspects and said, this aspect is required for use case 1, use case 7, use case 9, and then we can relate it to each other. And then we can say, you might not know why we need use case 3, aspect 3. But it supports your use case and a couple of other use cases. So the business case is even better than a solution that supports only your use case. And that's bring that link together. That is, for me, a sustainable approach.
Before I had a life in data analytics management, I had a life in corporate development, multi-project management, and so on. And what I learned from there is exactly quantifying and questioning initiatives. So what I then brought into my life as a data professional was exactly this, what you're just mentioning. Different dimensions. So the value contribution towards internal or external customers, the competitiveness of the company in general or the product, and then process-related efficiency and effectiveness. The other dimension is the ease of realization. So how much time does it take? Do we have the IT landscape for that? Do we have the skills and know-how in place? So all of these criteria. And the third dimension was what you just said, the specific data value contribution. And looking then beyond this particular use case and seeing where do we see common goals between the projects and initiatives. Do we deal, for example, all with business partner data. Yeah. So then I could say, hey, we have here synergies. We could define together, yeah, data quality criteria and data definitions for business partner data. Yeah. So or we can use it as a pilot use case for an enterprise data catalog and so on, yeah, or to roll out roles and so on. So these three dimensions is something that I like very much to introduce to companies, and you always can adjust it to the special needs of the company, but it makes them think. And what I always find kind of interesting, and I would like to know if you have the same experience. If you look into the names of projects, company projects, I always see replacement of application XYZ, introducing
rings the bell, yeah.
Introducing new application XYZ. Yeah. And I always say, like, okay, why do all these projects have in their name an application in it?
Yeah. You know, this is I have exactly the same thing, and I've already addressed that. I said, you are anticipating the solution, or sometimes you might have the solution first and then you're searching for the right products, problems that the solution solves. Right? Say, what is the business capability that you want to gain or improve? And then let's see, be open-minded, and maybe the solution is not to replace application A by version 2 of application A, but to do it totally differently. You might achieve the same thing by changing your processes. And then why should you put constraints on it early?
Yeah. Martin, 2 questions I have here. The one question is now, do you have like maybe for the audience, based on your long-term experience and you have, could you say like some key KPIs or metrics, yeah, where you say, if you have a data office, these are KPIs or metrics you should look into and introduce right at the beginning? Is there something that you would say it makes sense to kind of, make transparent the success stories or the value contribution?
Not really hard things, because this is, there are typical types of KPIs, or, I usually use the word data quality indicators, to show that it's different from the rest. And next to the typical data quality thing that everybody does, it's very much about time. Where do you save time? How quickly do you do things? Because everybody gets something right eventually, but can you accelerate that? And then you make a promise, I will have delivered it by then. Yeah, if you measure those, that's really good. And very often it's about looking at trends. Yeah? You don't know whether something is good or bad, or can be improved or not. But you can say, can we get better or worse, or can we just get it down or up over time? And then you measure, and then it doesn't really matter whether it's objectively good or bad, but it's better than before. And if you can prove that, then you have found the right KPI.
Yeah. Now the last question. I asked you before, and I will now, based on the entire conversation we had, and also we can maybe use it also a little bit to summarize the conversation that we had. If you would be now again approached, just speaking now for the scenario, so Boehringer Ingelheim, don't worry. But if you would be approached, or let's say someone is approached to become a CDO, what non-negotiables should be placed by the CDO and said, these are my non-negotiables. If you want to hire a CDO, this should be understood and agreed on, and I need to have the mandate on. Like, do you have like 3, 4 key?
Not that many. It's really the cross-functional mandate and the authority. This is the non-negotiable thing. Most of the other things are within your own responsibility. Of course, you can wish to have the support of the entire employees, but that's your responsibility to gain it. Yeah, you cannot expect that to be there already, but that you know that the board supports you without necessarily understanding data in detail. I personally would not start a CDO job without that being guaranteed.
Okay, nicely put. Then I think we come to an end. Thanks a lot for the very, I would say, in-depth conversation about the role of a CDO. I think it was really interesting to hear your view on it and the different perspectives. And I'm sure the audience will gain a lot out of the conversation. May I ask you to give a short summary, maybe, again, based on our conversation that we had, and to kind of advocate a little bit for the CDO role?
The CDO role is a role that is not properly covered by any of the existing roles, because the handling of data has gained relevance that it hasn't had before. Of course, people have dealt with data before, but the new technologies and the new algorithms and all of that hasn't been there 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, I would never have asked for a data role. Today, data plays such an important role in all these different aspects across all functions that it is absolutely indispensable to have somebody to oversee all of that and do this defensive part, do the offensive part of it in a very, very closely joined way that none of the single business functions themselves could do adequately.
Thank you for the summary. Thank you for the entire conversation. I really enjoyed it. And I hope to hear a lot from the viewers and listeners. And if they have follow-up questions, please send them to me, send them to Martin. Martin is also on LinkedIn. We will provide also the link to your profile and to the channel.
And I'm happy to learn, because the best thing that can happen to me is that somebody disagrees and comes with good arguments which will broaden my horizon. I depend on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, saying that, because I think that is something that we still, the role, the topic is still so much evolving. And now with, AI, which we haven't talked today, and I think we do not always have to talk about AI. Yeah. so but it's also a facet that is now kind of coming up and being introduced to the CDO role. There's so much movement. Appreciate that you also mentioned that. Now really the final question, Martin. Now really that's the final question. We started the conversation with me giving a fun fact or an anecdote about data and water, or the river, the Ruhr River. And we start with this anecdote, and we give at the end always the guest the chance also to come up with a analogy between water and data. So if I ask you, what comes to your mind if you hear water and data?
Data is in flow. Yeah.
Okay, so data is in flow like water. That's appreciate that. That's a good answer. Martin, let me thank you once again. It was a pleasure to have you with us. Yeah? Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.